Welcome to the Swadhyaya sessions. So this platform we are utilizing it for as an academic session and as an academic aid to the students, both UG as well as PG first years, and we are planning the sessions also in accordance with the syllabus for both these UGs as well as PG first years, and we are conducting classes on daily basis. That is, as I have already mentioned in the last two sessions. Once more, I am repeating for new attendees. Sundays we'll be dealing with Prasuti and Sri Roga. Monday it will be for Panchakarma. Tuesdays for Casey. Thursdays for Shalya. Friday for Rasambhai Shijin. And Saturday is for Shalakya. So those who are interested can register in Swadhyaya and you can avail the classes. We'll be giving you recorded classes as well as PPTs and printed notes as per syllabus. So we are planning to take 25 sessions as per syllabuses for each subject. And we are planning to wind up by October half. So that you can prepare it well for your exams coming in November. So with this intention, we have started these series. And today we have got Dr. Divya Srinath in relation to the Prasuti classes. The first two classes of all the sessions will be free sessions. After that, it will be paid sessions. For more details, kindly contact Dr. Jasul. Today, we invite Dr. Divya Srinath, Madam, to convey the classes. Thank you so much. Ma'am, you can start the class.
Thank you, Dr. Gauri. A very good afternoon to one and all. Today's topic is diagnostic techniques and investigations in obstetrics and gynecology. Am I clear? Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
Dr. Clear.
Gauri?
It's clear.
Okay.
You can continue.
Yes.
Okay. The first and foremost step in diagnosis of a disease is a proper history taking. You had to take the case thoroughly, like what is the presenting complaint, is there any history related to it, which help you to make a differential diagnosis. For example, if a woman came to you complaining of oligomenorrhea means there is normal 28-day cycle, but this lady is having cycle length more than 35 days. So in such a patient, their differential diagnosis can be either it may be due to PCOS or even due to thyroid dysfunction or even due to anemia. So with this differential diagnosis, you had to make a proper diagnosis. So this medical investigation supports your clinical diagnosis. So you can select some of the investigations like PCOS.
Dr. Divya?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, Dr. Jaswal Enduti. Voice break ആവുന്നുണ്ടോ? Hello, Dr. Jasul. Hello, Dr. Gauri.
Doctor, you can continue.
Okay. So I'm telling about the differential diagnosis. So for a proper differential diagnosis, I think some echo is there. So proper differential diagnosis, you had to do tests like an ultrasonography to rule out PCOS, or even do a thyroid function test, or even an HB test, which help you to make a proper diagnosis or an accurate diagnosis. So the investigation, there are so many investigations, like it can be a biochemical investigation. Biochemical investigation means with the help of body fluids, that it can be either blood or urine, etc. Some investigations are done, like that of even anemia for anemia HB test, or hormone analysis like FSH, LH, or AMH, like that. Hormone test is done, or even tumor markers like CA125. All these comes under biochemical investigations. So these are investigations which are done in body fluids. Okay. Diagnostic techniques means the investigations which are done to, like with that of screening test, or even with imaging techniques, which are comes under this diagnostic techniques, or even the pulse, or even taking BP. All these comes under the diagnostic techniques. These diagnostic techniques can be either invasive or non-invasive. Invasive means there is some piercing of skin, tissues, etc. Non-invasive means diagnostic techniques like USG, etc. are non-invasive techniques. So for easy understanding, I had classified these investigations mainly into the common investigation that we are using in obstetrics as well as gynecology. So first we will see what are the common investigations that we are doing in an obstetrics. So the first and foremost test is a urine pregnancy test. Sometimes most of the patient came to you with a UPT test result, either UPT positive or negative. So urine pregnancy test, we all know, right? In this, beta HCG presence is evaluated. Either its presence or absence is evaluated. Like a sample of urine is taken, 2 or 3 drops is inserted into this portion. So if 2 lines appears, it means there is presence of beta HCG. That is human chorionic gonadotrophin is present in the sample of urine. So that UPT is mainly to assess the presence or not. So this is a quantitative test, serum beta HCG. That is in blood, we are trying to quantify, that is how much amount is present. So it's a quantitative test. In this, this beta HCG hormone secreted from the trophoblast. As you can see, this is the trophoblast, and this portion develops into the embryo. So this trophoblastic portion contribute to the formation of placenta. So from this trophoblastic cell, this HCG hormone is secreted, and which is present in the maternal blood. So this hormone passes into the maternal blood. So we can evaluate this HCG, serum HCG in the maternal blood. Okay, this beta HCG is present almost 8 to 10 days after fertilization. So if suppose today is 23rd is a menstrual period of a first menstrual day of a lady. After 14 days, it may be her ovulation time. Then after the next month 23rd is her expected period, menstrual period. So before 4 or 5 days, you can see, or you can assess the serum HCG in the maternal blood to assess the pregnancy or not. If you are doing a UPT, you can assess, or you can see the presence of HCG in urine on the day of the expected menstrual period. But in serum HCG, you can assess it 2 or even 4 or 5 days before the expected menstrual period. You can see whether the lady is pregnant or not. So one more thing is that the HCG level increases. That is, it gets doubled in every 48 hours. And it reaches its peak at about 8 to 11 weeks. It reaches about 100 international unit. After that, it declines slowly, and later it maintains a particular limit. So if a serum HCG is greater than 25 is considered to be positive, that is pregnancy is positive. So if less than 5 means negative. So how this 5 unit is present in the blood? So normally our body produces this beta HCG hormone in a traces amount, like from the pituitary gland or even from liver, a trace amount of HCG is normally produced in the body. So if a value greater than 25 is considered to be positive, pregnancy positive. We can also apply this serum HCG, especially in diagnosis of pregnancy, as we had already mentioned, and also in diagnosis of ectopic pregnancy. That if that serum beta HCG is positive and this value gets doubled in every 48 hours, then after that, then we are doing a USG evaluation. There is no gestational sac is seen inside the uterus. So this is a normal uterus, and usually the embryo gets implanted here. When you're doing a USG, you can see a gestational sac here. So when you are doing a USG and a gestational sac is not visible, but the serum beta HCG value gets increased, like by say about 60 to 80%, it increases in every 48 hours. So there may be a possibility of ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancy means this usually it is implanted inside the uterus. If the embryo is implanted outside the uterus, the most probable chance is on the fallopian tube or even on the ovary itself. Another application is on spontaneous abortion. So if the beta HCG level gets reduced by 30%, then we can understand there is a chance of abortion. There is a chance of spontaneous abortion is there. Another thing, even in hydrogen mole also, there is after the removal, after the abortion, we can assess this HCG for whether for complete evacuation of this hydrogen hormone, we are using this HCG marker, not marker, the HCG serum HCG. And even in a non-pregnant woman, sometimes we can see there is a increased level of beta HCG. It is seen especially in certain ovarian tumor and also in male certain testicular tumor have an increased serum beta HCG level. So we can use the same test in different contexts. Okay. So now we will see, first we will go to for a doctor for an investigation, then there will be a routine set of investigations to be done, or these are just screening tests. We are screening a patient we are seeing whether this particular patient is present in this high risk group or not. So these are the common routine investigations like this common blood test, HB blood grouping, and we also do a fasting blood sugar and also postpartum blood sugar to find whether this patient is already a diabetic or not. This lady is already diabetic or not. Another common function we do is a thyroid function test. So the normally thyroxine is essential for the normal development of the baby. So in the first trimester or in the first 3 months, the baby depends thyroxine from the mother. So mother's thyroxine function should be normal. Otherwise, we had to supplement it. So the thyroid function evaluation is important. Thyroid function, a thyroid hormone or thyroxine is essential for the proper brain development of the baby. Another is vitamin D. Vitamin D is now routinely done procedure test. Then HIV and hepatitis B. These investigations are mainly done because it can cause vertical transmission. That is, this infection can spread from the mother to the baby. So if we are diagnosing it in the first trimester, if we are managing thoroughly, especially in the HIV in the first trimester, there is less than 25% chance for transmission of this HIV to the baby. And another common investigation test like torch infections. TO means toxoplasmosis, R rubella, C for cytomegalovirus, and H for herpes simplex. These are a common group of infection. These cause congenital anomaly to the baby. So these, and also they may cause the repeated pregnancy loss to the mother. So these had other common routine investigation to screen the high risk mother, and we had to give special care or special treatment for her condition. Another is routine, urine routine. Here we assess the albumin, urine sugar, pus, etc. If certain urinary infection is there, which can also ascend to the vagina and which also even spread to the uterus also. And certain antenatal screening like weight. The weight of the mother is checked in every visit. Like the mother had to gain almost 10 to 15 kilos. This normal weight gain is essential for the normal weight gain of the baby also. So we are also checking this weight gain also. If a sudden weight gain along with edema, etc., and also if there's an increase in BP, then it may point to the pregnancy induced hypertension. So a proper routine weight checkup as well as blood pressure measurement is done as a routine procedure or as a screening procedure. So another examination is a biophysical examination, that we are assessing how the baby is, how the environment of the baby is through the USG ultrasonography or through the Doppler ultrasonography. So USG is one of the most commonly used procedures in obstetrics, especially as you can see this USG. There are so many types of probes are using. This is the most commonly two types of probe that we are commonly using is curvilinear probe and this endocavity probe. So this curvilinear probe we are using for abdominal examination, and this endocavity we are using for transvaginal examination. So this probe contains a picoelectric crystals. So these crystals, when an electric energy is applied, they produce sound waves. So this sound waves is passed through the tissue and then it gets revert back. And this and the then it is and this then the echo the echo is received and it is converted into electrical energy and it is displaced in the screen. And another thing is this is a non-ionized radiation, so it is safe even for pregnancy. And a coupling gel, you can see this there is a gel is applied before using this probe. So this gel helps to prevent the air in between this maternal surface and the probe. So the basic principles of USG contains this echogenicity, that is the echo is a sound wave is passed and the sound wave reflects back, and this principle is using. So if there is water or a fluid is there, so the sound waves get absorbed in that fluid, so there will not be any echo or there will not be any echo, so it will be applied as black on the screen. If there is a hyperechoic substance, that is if the sound waves are reflected, more sound waves are reflected back, then it will be appear as white on the screen. So this is the basic principle. The basic principle, black and white, the color difference helps to make the diagnosis. And also the frequency. If in this curvilinear probe, we are using on the abdominal surface, so that it had to pass through the muscles, the skin, the fat tissue, etc. So there's more surfaces are there, we are using a low frequency mode so that the sound waves may pass more deeper. If high frequency, especially in transvaginal examination, we use a high frequency so that more clear images we will get. So mainly in first trimester, we will assess the pregnancy, that is if the pregnancy is present inside the uterus or not. That is the first aim of a USG. The second thing is to rule out an ectopic pregnancy, and then we will see whether the gestational sac, if it is 5 weeks, we can see a gestational sac inside the uterus. I will show you. This is a gestational sac and this is the uterus. You can see this is a uterus and this is the gestational sac inside the uterus, and this is a yolk sac, and this is a fetal pole. So by 5 weeks, you can see a gestational sac inside the uterus. 5.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, like that. 5 weeks gestational sac, 5.5 weeks, you can see a yolk sac. 6 weeks, you can see an embryo. In 6.5, you can see this fetal heart rate. You can see small flickering like this. So if a gestational Someone asked a question. Dr. Jasul, Anandita is asking a question.
Yeah, questions we can
Okay, okay,
address last time.
Okay,
You can
okay.
continue.
Okay. In the first scan also we can assess the number of pregnancy, whether there is a multiple pregnancy like that. We can see if there's 2 gestational sacs are seen inside the uterus, then we can say that there's a multiple pregnancy. And another thing is the dating, that if heartbeat is seen, or if fetal pole is seen, we can say that there's about 6 or 6.5 weeks, like that we can say. So dating of pregnancy is also is assessed in the first scan. So there are so many abnormalities we can see in the first scan. Some is like ectopic pregnancy. I had already mentioned the pregnancy which is outside the uterus or outside the main uterus. Then is anembryonic pregnancy. Anembryonic pregnancy means this gestational sac will be seen even after 6.5 or even after 7 weeks. There will not be any yolk sac or a fetal pole or a fetal heart rate. This is an embryonic pregnancy. So we can easily diagnose this gestational sac with a diameter more than 16 millimeter. Then also there is no yolk sac or fetal pole. Then it is known as an embryonic pregnancy. Okay. Then missed abortion. So if there is some bleeding, we can see retroperitoneal bleeding, you see, then we can opt for it. Then we can think about a missed abortion. So this is a normal. So this is we can see this gestational sac, and this is a yolk sac, and this is a fetal pole. This image we can see ultrasonographically like this. So in a first USG, these are some of the common terms we can see. MSD, mean sac diameter. I had already mentioned this is a gestational sac, and I am measuring the diameter. That is the mean sac diameter. If mean sac diameter more than 16 millimeter and absence of embryonic pole, there is an empty gestational sac or a blighted ovum or an embryonic pregnancy. These are the common terms we are using. Next, we can see in an USG set, a USG report is a CRL, that is crown rump length. So this measurement is taken as crown rump length. This area will develop into future head. So this diameter is measured as crown rump length. So we can see in a report the single viable intrauterine gestation. So in every report, it will be specific, clearly mentioned that intrauterine gestation. If a gynecologist miss an ectopic pregnancy, it is considered as a very bad obstetrician, like that it is considered. So abnormal findings are ectopic pregnancy. So this is an image of an ectopic pregnancy. This is a normal uterus, and in this we cannot see any inside the endometrium. We cannot see any gestational sac. We can see a gestational sac near to this area. So an embryonic pregnancy we had discussed. And another term we will see in the first trimester or in the early scan is subchorionic hemorrhage. Subchorionic hemorrhage means this is the trophoblastic cells, and which may develop into future placenta. So there is some blood is seen on the back side surface of this future developing placenta. So this subchorionic hemorrhage. So there is a chance of threatened abortion is there. In almost 60% of cases, it may usually reabsorb, or the continuation of pregnancy is possible. Like with our Garbhasthamana drugs, we can continue the pregnancy. In some cases, there may be a chance of abortion also. So another common finding is of not common, but another type of finding is of hydatiform mole. So this trophoblast, there is this trophoblast develop into placenta. So this will be an abnormal proliferation of this trophoblast, which may lead to this hydatiform mold. So in such type of cases, then abortion is a must and serum beta HCG should be monitored for complete evacuation of this hydatiform mold. So and one of another rare complications also, uterine anomaly also we can see in the first trimester scan. So this is a uterine didelphys, that is there is two half of uterus. So sometimes an embryo may attach in a particular horn. So there may be an early preterm labor or even abortion may be a cause. In this is an ultrasound image of this bicoordinate uterus. You can see this gestational sac on one horn. So another thing is in the nowadays it's a common procedure to do an aneuploidy scan in between 11 to 13 weeks. Aneuploidy means there is this test is done to detect whether there is any chromosomal anomaly. So it is usually done between 11 to 13 weeks. So this first time aneuploidy screening help us to detect almost 85% case of Down syndrome. Down syndrome means there's a trisomy 21. That is, there is some defect in the 21st chromosome. Okay. Then we can also easily see the nuchal translucency. Like this is nuchal translucency. That is, there is here you can see this anomaly in the skin fold and neck. So if there are fluid deposit between the skin fold and this neck region, so that this measurement will increase. So in this case, this nuchal translucency is more than 3.5 millimeter. That is, in this case, the nuchal translucency is more than 3.5 millimeter. So then definitely there is a chance of chromosomal anomalies there, or trisomy 21 can be suspected. So nuchal translucency is one of the most observed in most of the cases. In all cases, you had to observe the nuchal translucency. This is a patient case report with nuchal translucency is 5.1 millimeter. They were advised for further screening, and at last they decided to terminate the pregnancy because the baby is having a risk of trisomy 21 or Down syndrome. And the earliest anomaly which is detected is anencephaly. Anencephaly, that is, there is absence of this most of the skull bone and brain hemisphere. This is the most earlierly detected anomaly. By 10th week, we can detect this anomaly. So in Down syndrome patient, another thing they will observe is the nasal bone. That is, if nasal bone, this is the nasal bone, you can see this. This is a nasal bone in a normal patient. And in this case, there is absence of nasal bone. So absence of nasal bone is also an indicator of trisomy 21 or Down syndrome. And then the third scan is done as an anomaly scan, which is commonly done in 16 to 18 weeks. Okay, the first scan is to confirm the pregnancy and also to confirm the position of the pregnancy, whether it is intrauterine or not. The second scan is the aneuploidy scan. Now it is done between 11 to 13 weeks. And the third scan is the anomaly scan between 16 to 18 weeks. In this scan, every part of the body, of the fetal body is observed, whether 4 limbs are present or if the head is normal in size or not, whether the head size is increased. Like in hydrocephalus, the head will be much larger, or whether the spine is intact, whether there is any discontinuity or spina bifida is present, like in thorax, whether the heart has 4 chambers, like that every part is observed. And even the umbilical cord, whether the umbilical cord contains 3 vessels, that is 2 arteries and 1 vein, and whether there is adequate amniotic fluid is present around the baby. All these things are detailedly evaluated. So in a USG, you can see some common terms, especially in this anomaly scan: BPD, HC, FC, AC, like common certain terms are there. So we'll discuss what are these common terms. That is BPD, biparietal diameter. That is, this is the transsectional view of the skull of the baby. So this diameter is the biparietal diameter, and head circumference is also measured to in order to evaluate is there proper growth of the baby is there. Also to exclude there is hydrocephalus or microcephaly. Microcephaly is small head. Hydrocephalus means large head. Femur length is also femur length, which is the longest one. Its length is also measured to assess the fetal growth also. Abdomen circumference, this factor is also assessed to the fetal size is increasing or not. So now you know these terms: BPD, biparietal diameter, head circumference, femur length, abdominal circumference. So these are evaluate the fetal biometric profile. And then we'll go look for fetal environment, whether the placenta is located in the correct place. That is, in this image, you can see the placenta in the in the upper portion, around the fundus or in the anterior wall or in the posterior wall, like that it is evaluated. If the placenta is situated in the low portion, or it is a low lying placenta, so as the pregnancy advances, this uterus gets stretched, so there is a chance of bleeding. And also in this third case, you can see the placenta is almost covering the cervical opening. So there is a less chance for normal vaginal delivery. Okay. Another thing is this placenta accreta, increta, percreta. That is, if the placenta is attaching more deeper into the muscular tissue of the uterus, then it is placenta increta. Like if it pierces even outside the uterus, then it is placenta. It's like percreta. So we are assessing the placenta size, location, etc. Another thing is amniotic fluid. The fluid around the baby is the amniotic fluid. We are looking for whether there is oligohydramnios. That is whether the fluid is less, or polyhydramnios, whether the fluid is more. All these are abnormal conditions. So you had to check the fetal environment, also fetal biometry also. So by the ultrasound screening, if it is more given importance to maternal age, if the lady of age greater than 35 years, the screening test is important, or history of repeated abortion, if both the partner have a family history of any congenital anomaly or a mental retarded, or a previous baby with any congenital anomaly, these patients had to do a thorough screening for this aneuploidy or even for this anomaly scan. So in a screening, we first do an ultrasonographic evaluation. So in an ultrasonographic evaluation, we saw that there is an increased nuchal translucency, or nasal bone is absent. So we can think that there is some sort of anomalies there. So we will do some biochemical test. So some serum or blood test. Like in first trimester, we will do a PAPA test, that is pregnancy associated plasma protein A or beta HCG. These are the two markers. Like this pregnancy associated plasma protein A is secreted from this trophoblast. This trophoblast is further proliferated into two types, cyto and syncytial trophoblast. So these syncytial trophoblasts secreted this pregnancy associated plasma protein A. So when the level of pregnancy associated plasma protein A is low, then there is an increased chance of this anomaly is there. Another is serum beta HCG. Serum beta HCG, if in a Down syndrome or in a trisomy 21, it is almost 2.5 times more, like 2.5 times more multiples of median. So then also we can see that these two markers are abnormal. So there is a more chance of abnormality to the fetus. So in a second trimester, that is after this 16 to 18 weeks, we will do a triple test. Triple test means similar like that. That's like it is easily remembered by A, alpha fetoprotein, B, serum beta HCG, serum beta HCG, and estradiol. These are the triples marker. The quadruple marker means the same triple marker plus one more inhibin. Okay, is it clear? Triple marker is serum alpha fetoprotein, A for alpha fetoprotein, B, serum beta HCG, and estradiol. Quadruple plus one more inhibin. So if there is any neural tube defect, neural tube means if there is any developmental defect in the brain as well as in the spinal cord, that is neural tube defect. In such case, the alpha fetoprotein level will be high, the serum beta HCG, the other three markers will be normal, or inhibin bay is not applicable. In anencephaly also same, the alpha fetoprotein level will be high. In Down syndrome, the alpha fetoprotein and the serum estradiol will be normal, but serum beta HCG and inhibin A is high. In trisomy 18, that is trisomy 21 means there is some abnormality in the chromosome number 21. That is trisomy 21. 18 means there is some abnormality in the chromosome number 18. So by the screening test, we found to know that there is some abnormality. So that there is that screening test only. So we had to confirm our diagnosis. We had to confirm that this baby is having some congenital anomaly. We had to confirm our diagnosis. For that, we use some invasive diagnostic methods. Okay. Some of the invasive diagnostic methods like chorionic villi sampling, amniosynthesis, and chordosynthesis. These are the invasive diagnostic methods. So we will deal one by one. One is amniosynthesis. Amniosynthesis means in which there's amnio. Amnio means amniotic fluid. We are taking the amniotic fluid and we are examining. So the amniosynthesis means under the ultrasound guidance, by the ultrasound guidance, a needle, a long needle is inserted to the maternal surface, maternal skin, maternal tissues, in the of cover passing the uterine musculature, and then it reaches the amniotic sac. Then 10 to 20 ml of this amniotic fluid is collected. So we had to insert it properly. That is why we are using an ultrasound guidance. So 20 ml is taken and that is evaluated. For cytological study, we are sending that. So this amniosynthesis process, it should be done best between 14 to 20 weeks. So by this we can assess the congenital anomaly like 21, 18, etc. And also some of the risk for this amniosynthesis is like that there may be a risk for the accidental needle penetration to the baby, or there is 1 to 2% chance of fetal loss itself. Okay. Another is chordosynthesis. Cord means umbilical cord. We are piercing the umbilical cord and we are collecting blood from the umbilical cord. This is also a USG guided procedure. Carefully inserting the needle into the umbilical cord, almost situated within 2 to 3 centimeter near to placenta, and blood of 0.5 to 2 ml is collected. And this test is especially done to rule out fetal blood-related disorders like fetal hemolytic disease, fetal isoimmunization, fetal thrombocytopenia, or even fetal infection. This is best done between 18 to 20 weeks. You may get correct report during. In this case also there may be complication like fetal blood loss or accidental insertion of this needle to the baby, or even cord hematoma. Another is chorionic villi sampling. This is to be done between 10 to 13 weeks. So by inserting a cuscus bivalve speculum through vaginal portion, a catheter is inserted under ultrasonographic guidance. this chorionic villi, that is the form of placenta, that this chorionic villi develop into placenta. So from the chorionic villi, the sample is taken and it is assessed for the fetal DNA. So by all these tests, we are taking the fetal cells, especially for the DNA analysis. Then we can use it either in two types, either this FISH test, like fluorescence in situ hybridization, like that. In that case, if I am suspecting that whether this baby is having a trisomy 21, so I am telling to test this specific gene. For that, we are using this FISH test. In the second case, I don't have any idea about which gene is affected. So I am suggesting a karyotyping. Karyotyping assesses all part of this genes. So if you have any specific idea of this particular gene is affected, then you will suggest a FISH test. Okay, so in short, first you had to screen a high risk pregnancy, especially mother greater than 35 years old, or with a family history of any congenital anomaly, or even a previous pregnancy with congenital anomaly. You had to screen those patients and you had to do a detailed ultrasonographic evaluation. Or in some patients, by chance or by an ultrasonographic evaluation, you happen to see anomaly, you do a detailed ultrasonographic evaluation. Nowadays, there are more fetal-maternal specialists who do a thorough investigations on this congenital anomalies, etc. Then you will do a biochemical test like a triple test, quadruple test, etc. Then after the screening test, you will do a confirmatory test by an invasive test, like this chordsynthesis, aminosynthesis, etc. Then after that, you will do a karyotyping, either karyotyping or a FISH test. Most of the couple who have this, especially I had mentioned that case who with neural tube defect with nuchal translucency more than 5, that patient came to me for a second opinion. In that patient, they were advised that with biochemical markers also there is a high risk of trisomy 21, and that patient were advised an invasive test by the infertility center. So some patients may go further with the invasive test, but some patients may think that if there is a high risk of this congenital anomaly, then they opt for a abortion. Some patients, if they're precious baby, they will go further for an invasive test, and whether they will confirm whether this baby is healthy or not, then they will decide whether to continue the pregnancy or not. So now we will do it's an oral glucose tolerance test. It is done especially in 24 to 28 weeks. Even if a lady in her first trimester, if she is non-diabetic, there is a chance of lady to become diabetic in 24 to 28 weeks. So in such type of patient, we had to screen all patients. So 75 gram of glucose is given after 8 hours of fasting. Then first fasting blood sugar is measured. Then after 1 hour, another sample of blood is taken. Then after 2 hours, if the value is above than normal, then the patient is considered to be diabetic, and she had to advise for certain specific diet. Even after that, her insulin level is much high, then she may give insulin. Really, it was glucose challenge test, that is 50 gram glucose was given, or glucose tolerance test, 100 gram glucose was given. Now it is oral glucose tolerance test with 75 gram glucose is given. This is done, the time you had to be clear within 24 to 28 weeks. Other complication, other investigation especially is hypertension is one of the higher risk in pregnancy. That is, it is considered among the dangerous triad. That is hypertension, other thing is bleeding disorder, and the third is infection. So these are the 3 dangerous triad in a pregnancy. So every month the woman is checked for her BP. So usually in first trimester, the BP just fall a little bit. After 20 weeks, there will be an increase in the BP level. So in a gestational hypertension, there may be an increase in BP without proteinuria. But in preeclampsia means there is increase in BP with proteinuria, and also there is edema in the body, there is a headache, and also eye related some pain in the back of the eye. Their patient may have pain. In such type of patient, we had to further evaluate and we had to manage her BP. So even after delivery also, it takes 12 weeks for the hypertension to be controlled. And then it is a third trimester scan. The third trimester scan is mainly assessed to the fetal growth and well-being, whether there is any intrauterine growth retardation. That is, intrauterine growth retardation means the normal fetal growth is assessed. If it deviates from the normal standard level, if it deviates less, that is baby weight is much less, then there is a risk of intrauterine growth retardation or IUGR, or there may be also a risk for intrauterine death also. And also it is done to confirm the presentation of the baby, whether it is a cephalic presentation or breech presentation. Cephalic presentation means head down, that is head is in the lower portion of the uterus, so that there is a chance for normal vaginal delivery. In breech presentation, there is a less chance for normal vaginal delivery. So in late pregnancy, another investigation or diagnosis, non-stress test, NST, which is commonly done. In this is one you need to measure the fetal heart rate, and this lady's hand, this is a measure, with this measures the fetal movement. If a baby moves, it is the lady is advised to push the button like the certain pen, no, like that the lady had to push the it is observed for almost 20 to 60 minutes. If the basic logic behind is that if a baby moves or a baby kicks, her heart or his or her heart rate may increase 15 beats. After 15 seconds, it comes back to normal. So if it shows that it is a reactive NST or the baby is normal. So if the baby is hypoxic or if the baby has less oxygen supply, then this normal increase and decrease is not seen. So we can think that the baby is having hypoxia. We had to manage immediately. So NST is done for 20 to 60 minutes. So in that, fetal heart rate and fetal movement are assessed. This is a third trimester scan. In this, you can see this intrauterine fetus with cephalic presentation. The fetal biometry correspond to average. This, mainly the presentation is mentioned. The fetal weight and fetal growth is assessed. So here ends the detailed obstetrical investigations or examination that we do in Dr. Jasul. Hello.
Yeah.
Shall I continue with the second part?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, if we are moving to the gynecological investigations. So in this gynecological investigations, we can see that we had to do a detailed history. That is much important in every gynec patients. We had to do a detailed history with detailed menstrual history, last menstrual period, pre-menstrual period. You had to assess 3 consecutive menstrual periods so that you can assess the regularity of the cycle and also the cycle length. Cycle length should also be measured, that is whether it is 28 days or how many days the bleeding is. And if the patient is sexually active, sexual history also important, especially in infertility patients, you had to ask for the sexual history also. I think there is mixing of slides is there. Sorry for the trouble. I want to add 2 more points in the obstetrical investigations. So one more thing is 3D scan, 3D or 4D scan. It is now an advanced type of scan. It is especially done for to assess the cleft lip or cleft palate, that it can be easily seen in the 3D or 4D scan. Doppler scanning is also done in the in the last trimester, it assesses the normal flow of blood through the umbilical artery or uterine artery, which is essential to understand whether there is an intrauterine growth retardation or hypoxia to the fetus. Okay. Now we will continue with the gynecological investigation. So some of the common investigations that we use, the hormone investigations, like that of prolactin, TSH, FSH and LH, estrogen, progesterone, androgen, etc. So these are the common hormones that we are doing, hormone tests that we are doing. So one of the common hormone that we're doing is prolactin. The prolactin hormone is secreted from the anterior pituitary gland. So this hormone is responsible for the lactation in after postpartum period. So then the physiological increase of prolactin hormone is essential for the normal lactation. So even also after exercise or even some stress also cause a physiological mild increase in prolactin level. Or certain medicines or certain drugs also cause an increase in the prolactin hormone level. So if a patient comes to you with galactorrhea means the secretion of milk from the breast in a non-pregnant woman, if or a lady comes to you with a clinical presentation like galactorrhea, or even oligomenorrhea, anovulation, like that, you had to check the prolactin level. Or sometimes the patient comes to you with the clinical symptom with, like as I had already mentioned, milk coming from the breast. Otherwise, while doing an infertility evaluation, we are happen to see there is an increased level of prolactin hormone, especially greater than 20 nanogram per ml. So if such a finding is that there is an increased prolactin level in her blood, so the next thing you had to check the TSH. Okay, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. If TSH is increased, okay, if TSH is increased, it may be the reason for increased prolactin level. So you had to manage the thyroid, you had to manage the TSH level, or you had to advise the thyroid drugs like thyroxine, etc. Otherwise, if the thyroxine, especially otherwise if the TSH level is normal, then the next probable diagnosis will be because this prolactin hormone is secreted from the anterior pituitary. So the next probable diagnosis may be there is some like growth in the pituitary gland, which may be the reason for the increased prolactin level. So in 80 to 90% of case, there may be increased TSH, may be the reason for this increased prolactin level. So you had to check the TSH first, and later, if it is, I had already mentioned later that you can do an MRI. So the clinical presentations in if an thyroid function is abnormal, the clinical presentation may be oligomenorrhea, that is, there may be more than 35 days. Cycle interval may be more than 35 days, or even some patient may have amenorrhea, absence of menstruation, or heavy bleeding, or subfertility. Thyroid hormone is essential for the normal conception. Nowadays, there are so many infertility cases associated with the hypothyroidism. So first you had to check TSH. In TSH, if it is high, then check T4 level. If T4 level is low, then it is hypothyroidism. If T4 level is normal and TSH level is high, it is said to be the subclinical hypothyroidism. If T4 and T3 level is high, it is hypothyroidism. So if a patient comes to you with oligomenorrhea, definitely you had to check the thyroid functions also. Another this hormone test we are doing is FSH-LH. FSH in early follicular phase, especially FSH is done in the second or third day of menstruation. It is the most apt time to evaluate the FSH level. If FSH level is between 3 to 10, it is normal. If FSH level is greater than 20 or 25 international unit per liter, so it indicates that the ovary is not functioning. Like if a thyroid is not functioning, so the thyroid stimulating hormone is secreted more to stimulate this thyroid gland. Likewise, if FSH level is increased, so that it is stimulating more the ovary to function normally. So an increased FSH means increased FSH and LH means it indicates that the ovary function is not doing properly. So diminishing ovary, so AMH value is also checked. AMH hormone is evaluated on day 2 or day 3. In that, you will get a normal value of 2 to 4 nanogram per ml. If it is less than 2 nanogram per ml, we can assess that the ovarian function is low. If it is more than 4, it indicates that there is an increased risk of PCOS. Another test is the serum progesterone level. We are evaluating serum progesterone level in the mid-luteal phase. That is, in the first phase, there is follicular development. Up to 14 days, there is ovulation. After that, there is luteal phase. After ovulation to the next days from 14 to 28, this is the luteal phase. In the mid-luteal phase, due to ovulation, the progesterone level will be 5 to 20 nanogram. It indicates that there is a proper ovulation is done. Proper ovulation happened. So moving to the USGs in gynecological disorders. We usually use a USG to assess the PCOS, endometriosis, endometriotic hyperplasia, or irregular bleeding, or with patients complaints of fibroid, etc. So first we will see what about endometriosis. Endometriosis means the presence of functional endometrium outside the uterus. Endometrium is the inner lining of the uterus. So this inner lining, if present outside the uterus, is known as endometriosis. Even in the muscular layer, it can happen. Then it is known as adenomyosis. So if a patient comes to you with a severe menstrual pain, that is menstrual pain lasts for even starts 2 to 3 days prior to menstruation, or even during the menstruation, or even some patients may have even 2 or 3 days after menstruation, they have severe abdominal pain along with brownish discharge. So the first thing came to your mind should be endometriosis. You should suspect endometriosis first. Then you do a USG to rule out your diagnosis. In a USG, if the most common site of developing endometriosis is the ovary. Ovary is the most common site. So while doing a USG, you can see that there will be a chocolate cyst or ovarian endometrioma. Sometimes you see that there is a clear cyst, or sometimes it may say that in the report may say that there is a cyst with low level echogenicity, or even there is multiple septation is seen in the cyst. All these are characteristics of this ovarian endometrioma. Sometimes with severe adhesion also, this ovary may be dislocated from its normal position. Sometimes the ovary may move from the normal position to the even to the back of the uterus, so that sometimes there may be normal ovulation or normal ovum pickup by the fallopian tube is not possible. Or sometimes due to this endometriosis, hydrosalpinx, that is fluid may fill in the fallopian tube. That is hydrosalpinx is also commonly seen associated with this endometriosis. In this report, you can see this is right ovarian cyst. One more common finding is that in most of the patients, almost 60% of patients, we can see that the endometrioma is seen on the left ovary. Or even sometimes you can see bilateral, that is in both ovaries, you can see the endometriotic or chocolate cyst. Next common disease you will get in OPD, or that is PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So the common clinical presentation you may get is of irregular cycles, that there may be amenorrhea for 2 or 3 months, or there may be heavy bleeding. Like irregular cycles is one clinical presentation. Then next is hirsutism. You can see that patient may have increased hair growth on her face, neck, chest, etc. Like male pattern of hair, thick hair you can see. Another is acanthosis nigricans. That is, you can see pigmentation on the neck, which is a symbol or a sign of insulin resistance in her body. She may be in a verge of like a pre-diabetic stage, and anovulation or infertility, which are the common clinical presentation. So in such patients, you can do a USG to evaluate the ovary. Usually you can see in a USG there is multiple follicles are seen in the ovary. Ovarian volume increases. Usually ovarian volume is less than 10 cc. In PCOS patients, the ovarian volume increases from 10 to even 10 to 19 cc. The ovarian volume increases. So we can also do a USG to evaluate the progress of our treatment. Another common investigation we usually do is on fibroid uterus. If a patient complains to you with irregular bleeding or heavy bleeding during menstruation, we can suspect the fibroid, the chance of fibroid is there. So fibroid are benign growth. It can be seen, it is originated from the muscular origin. If a fibroid occurs occurs near the endometrium, this is the endometrium. If this occur near this endometrium, then it is known as subserosal fibroid. If this between this muscular layer is known as intramural, or it close to the peritoneum, it is known as subserosal. Okay, inside near to the endometrium, it is submucosal, intramural, and subserosal. So this is an ultrasonographic image. This is a uterus. You can see this endometrium. You can see this fibroid. This is a submucous fibroid is getting into the endometrial cavity, which may be a reason for heavy bleeding for this patient. And also, if pregnancy is planning, this itself may be a cause for infertility. Or if this fibroid occurs near the corner of uterus. Corner means where the fallopian tube attached to the uterus. So this is the corner. If it occurs around or nearby the corner of uterus, there may be a more chance of ectopic pregnancy. So if there is a submucosal large fibroid is there, it is always advisable to do or to advise a myomectomy, to removal of this myoma or fibroid if pregnancy is planning or if severe bleeding is there. Next is antral follicular count. Antral follicular means a follicle of size 2 to 10 millimeter. Especially this antral follicular count is done during the second or third day of menstruation. So this is evaluated mainly through transvaginal sonography. And we can say that almost 5 to 10 antral follicle is present in an ovary around the second or third day of the cycle. So if the level is less than say about 8 or say about 5, then it is considered to be a poor reserve. If the antral follicle number is more than 10, then we can suspect a PCOS. So this AFC value is attaining more, especially nowadays IVF treatments are more. So this AFC usually is measured in the IVF centers, and patients sometimes approach to you claiming that they have low AFC or low AMH. Next is a follicular study, which help to evaluate the ovulation or not. So it also helps to evaluate the proper flow follicular growth. Follicle means an antral follicle, the small follicles. We can assess ultrasonographically the growth of follicle when the follicle reach almost 20 millimeter. Okay, when it reaches a number of say about 20 millimeter, there is more chance of rupturing of the follicle and ovulation happens. So we are assessing the follicular growth from 10th day, and alternate days we are advised to do an USG till the ovulation is observed. And after ovulation also, you can see the either there may be a dominant follicle is seen in either whether it is in a right or left ovary, and the doctor is assessing the follicular size like 12 into 15 millimeter, like that up to 20 millimeter. When it reaches, the ovulation happens, and as a sign of ovulation, this follicular fluid is present in the pouch of Douglas. Pouch of Douglas is the area behind to this uterus. That is the pouch of Douglas. in the pouch of Douglas is the most dependent area. So this follicular fluid may easily collected in the pouch of Douglas. It is also a sign of ovulation. One of the most common examination that we do in our OPD is a pelvic examination. So if a lady is either married or if she is sexually active, you can easily do a pelvic examination. So when a patient, after emptying her bladder, we place her in a lithotomic position. Then either by first you can do a bimanual examination. Bimanual examination is using both hands. First 2 fingers that is inserted into the vagina. There you can feel the lower portion of the uterus or the cervix. You can feel it, the lower portion of uterus, and you can assess whether the cervix is in upward or a downward direction, or whether the uterus is a retroverted or anteverted position. You can assess with the position of the cervix. Then you can do a cervical motion tenderness test like this. This is the cervix. I had inserted my 2 fingers to the vagina and I move the cervix a little bit. So if the patient had pain while moving, that is cervical motion or tenderness test is positive. So that there is some sort of infection. That is why the patient have this tenderness or pain. Most probably the patient may feel the movement, not pain. They can feel the movement, but not pain. If pain is there, there is some sort of infection or pelvic inflammatory disease is there. Next, after this vagina, and I am seeing the cervix like this. After that, I'm looking the fornix, whether the fornixes are free. That is the area around the cervix, the posterior side, anterior side, lateral side. I'm looking whether the fornixes are free or not. In the lateral fornixes, I can feel the ovary. My abdominal hand, when I am using my abdominal hand on the iliac fossa, around that region, that's here in this here, and I'm using my abdominal hand kept over here and my vaginal hand over here, I can easily, if a patient is thin, I can easily feel the ovary in between. Like that, on both sides, you can easily feel if the patient is lean. That is a bimanual examination. After that, you are assessing the position of the cervix. Now you can insert a Cusco's bivalve speculum. This is a Cusco's bivalve speculum. After making this mouth close, we can insert this speculum into the vagina, and then by pressing these 2 portions together, then the mouth will get open. When the mouth gets open, I had to screw it so that it will open and it will retain its position, so that my both hands will be free and I can take instruments or I can do a wiping, all those. Then this position, then this Cusco's will stay in position. So after that, we can, this is a view of Cusco's. This is a Cusco's. I had inserted a Cusco's there. You can see the cervix. This is a cervix with infection. So this is a normal cervix. You can see a cervix like this with normal cervix. Okay. This is a patient with severe infection. You can still see there is secretion coming from os. This is the internal os. Sorry, this is the external os. You can see secretion is coming from the os. So there is some infection there. There is cervicitis. This is the cervix and there is infection and inflammation. So there is cervicitis is present in this patient. Here also you can see an angry looking cervix that you can see. Okay, in this type of patient, we can look for infection, and if infection is present, we can give medicine internally, or even if we can do a retained douche or a local douche. Retained douche, I have got more result than a local douche. Like that, after putting a Cusco's, either using a Tribala Kashaya or a Nalpamaradi Kashaya, I'm retaining the medicine there for 2 minutes. Then after removing that, then again second set of medicine is using. In such type of retained douche, more effect is getting than a normal douche. So if a patient is having this patient, the cervix is not feeling healthy, so it is advised to do a pap smear. Pap smear means the cervix, I'm taking the cells, especially cells from this squamocolumnar junction, and I'm doing a cytological evaluation. Cytology means the cells in the particular area is studied for any abnormality or any premalignant lesion like that. So after inserting Cuscos, a pap smear is done. After that, I'm inserting. These are 3 types of brush which we are commonly using. This is a cyto brush. If I want a sample from this inner portion, especially this endocervix, I am using this type of brush. If I want sample from this area, both the squamocolumnar junction and also some inner tissue, I am using this type of brush because this portion I have inserted into the opening of cervix, and I will rotate the brush into 360 degree. So I will get enough sample. One more thing, you have to be careful that before taking a sample, please do not wipe or you do not use any reagents or on the cervix. You had to take it plainly. So the sample is taken, and please make sure that this top does not touch any of the surface. And after that, this portion, this broom is removed, and it is placed in the liquid, that is acetic acid, 90% acetic acid liquid, and it is sent for cytological evaluation. Is it clear? Okay, now the report will be either there is a normal study or even there is some mild change in the result, that is cervical intraepithelial neoplasia. There is some mild or moderate change in the pattern of cells, or even there may be a HPV infection, human papilloma viral infection. Is there such type of reports it may come? So depending upon that, we can treat accordingly. So it is mainly used to screen cervical cancer. We are suspecting that this case is having some abnormality in the cervical tissue. So this patient may have a probable chance of developing into cervical malignancy or cervical atypia. So such type of patient screening is done by this PAP screen. It is now commonly done. So you had to understand this properly. Another the next step of this PAP evaluation is colposcopic evaluation. So when the report came, it mentions that there is some atypia or some abnormality in the tissue. So my next step is to do a colposcopic evaluation. Colposcopy means it's like a microscope, like a binocular, which has more resolution, which has more zooming power, like 10 to 20 times more zooming power. So if a pap test is positive, we can do a colposcopic evaluation. This is a colposcope. By placing a patient in lithotomic position, and after inserting the Cuscos, opening the cervix, we are visualizing the cervix with the microscope, binocular, like binocular type of microscope. We are visualizing the cervix. Another, we are using it visualizing under acetic acid, that is visual inspection with acetowhitening or acetic acid applying. We can apply 3 to 5% of acetic acid on the cervix with a sponge holding forceps. We are painting the cervix. With this acetic acid. So in such case, if the abnormal cells or tissue is present in the cervix, it turns white, that is acetowhitening. So it will be easy to take biopsy from that particular area. Otherwise, we are doing a Schiller's iodine or Lugos iodine. We are painting the cervix with iodine. So the normal tissue will absorb the iodine color. You all know, it's almost like a brown color. The normal tissue will absorb the color. The abnormal tissue will not absorb. So you had to take biopsy from that particular area. Using either a punch biopsy forceps, you can take that particular sample from that particular area. You can do a test for either premalignancy or malignancy. Another common investigation which is done is a hysterosalpingography. Especially it is done in association with the infertility management. We can see that It's a radiological procedure. That is, after the patient is kept in lithotomy position after inserting Cascos by using a Rubin's cannula, you are injecting a dye. This dye is a water soluble dye and radiopaque. It is because of this radiopaque we can get an X-ray image. Only because of this radiopaque dye we can get this beautiful image. So 10 to 15 ml is inserted to the cervical opening, and we will take first X-ray when the uterus is filled. We will take first X-ray so that we can see whether there is any abnormality or whether there is any congenital anomaly of this uterus. Then second X-ray is taken after the spillage. Okay, this when a dye is injected, where first the uterus will fill, then it will pass through the fallopian tube and it will flow out into the peritoneal area. So if the tube is patent or if the tube is open, definitely this dye will flow out. So this is mainly done for a tube patency test. Okay, one thing you had to keep in mind that this patient should not have any vaginal infection or acute pelvic inflammatory disease like that. Otherwise, we will spread this infection to peritoneum. Okay, first you had to check whether the patient is cervix and vagina is healthy. Then only you can suggest an hysterosalpingography. After doing a hysterosalpingography for 3 months, there is an increased chance of pregnancy. Okay, this is one of a clinical observation. Another test is common is also done as a part of infertility evaluation. This is a diagnostic laparoscopy. Diagnostic laparoscope, as we all know, it's a fiber optic instrument. After piercing this anterior abdominal wall, using a venosal needle, carbon dioxide is inserted so that the abdomen gets insufflated. Then with the help of a trocar, another incision is made, and the incision is made here, or this, and the incision is made, and through that incision, a light source or a telescope is passed, so that you will get a view of the inside of the abdomen. This is a laparoscopic view. You can see a normal uterus with this white. This is a ovary, and this is a fallopian tube. This is the normal view of a peritoneum. So, and the pouch of Douglas, all are clear. All the membranes. Just look for all the findings. This mainly done to as a part of infertility evaluation, or also done as a part of treatment modality also. So this is a laparoscopic view of this is a normal endometrium. Normal image and laparoscopic image, and this is a laparoscopic image of an endometriotic pelvis. Okay, you can see this severe endometriotic deposit is there. In the ovary also you can see this endometrioma. Okay, these are two endometriomas and severe adhesions in the pouch of Douglas. This patient may definitely have dyspareunia, that is pain during sexual intercourse, or even severe pain during menstruation. This is a laparoscopic chromoperturbation, that is with the help of laparoscopy. That is the laparoscopic view with this. Another, the patient dye is injected through the cervix, and with the dye is injected, with the laparoscopic view itself, you can see the dye passes through the fallopian tube and it falls in the peritoneum. We can view that. That is the laparoscopic chromoperturbation. Like this blue dye is injected, and this dye usually absorbs within 3 to 4 hours. Sometimes the patient may, if they're doing like an HST, sometimes the patient may have mild abdominal discomfort or cramping may be seen, but usually this dye gets absorbed in 3 to 4 hours. And the investigation is hysteroscopy. Hysteroscopy, like laparoscopy, the hysteroscope, the instrument is passed inside through the cervix. Like after lithotomy position, after Cascos is inserted, then this hysteroscope is passed inside the cervical opening, and a distension media is using, like carbon dioxide or normal saline, like a distension media is inserted. Okay, After the insertion of media, you can see for whether there is any abnormality inside the uterus. Like this is a normal view. You can see the openings or the ostium where the fallopian tube is attached. There is no fibroid, no polyp, nothing like that. In this case, you can see the fibroid, etc. So with hysteroscopy is usually done if there is a suspected case of septum. That is whether septum is present in the uterus or polyp is present in the uterus. With the hysteroscope, along with the hysteroscopy, they will do as a curative also. They will remove the septum also. So this procedure can be used as a screening method or also as a therapeutic means they can use. So endometrial biopsy or endometrial sampling. We are taking in this, the Fresco's inserted and an endometrial sample is taken. That is from either from the like a scraping is done, both from the anterior abdominal, posterior abdominal, anterior uterine surface or anterior, posterior, both lateral. Or from these 4 areas, samples are collected and they are evaluated, especially done in postmenopausal bleeding. That is, even after menopause, there is bleeding. There may be chance of this endometrial hyperplasia or endometrial CA. To evaluate that also, we can use this endometrial biopsy, or even patient with abnormal uterine bleeding, we can do this endometrial biopsy. Another common is CA125 tumor marker. Tumor markers evaluated for any ovarian tumor, or even CA125 is increased in patients with endometriosis. In endometriosis patients, the CA125 may be much increased than the normal value. So it's also marker we can use in the endometriosis and also ovarian CA. So some of the common, next is the breast tissues. Some of the common breast disease you may get in your OPD, maybe the patient may complain of a lump in the breast, or there may be pain, or there may be discharge like bloodish or yellowish discharge from the nipple, or even some redness in the. So it is always advised to do a screening test, either do a mammogram or a breast USG. Or even if cyst is there, we can also do an fine needle aspiration also. If patient is of younger age, or if the patient is a pregnant or a lactating mother, we can do a breast USG. Then by this we can see whether there is a tumor or a cyst. Cyst is a fluid-filled swelling. If a mass is present, we will assess the shape. If there is irregular shape, is always a sign of there is a possible chance of malignancy. And also the blood supply to the core of the tumor. If the more blood supply is there, then also it is a suspected malignancy. And microcalcification, there is a calcium deposition is seen in the tumor. These are some of the symptoms or some of the observations or some of the images that we get for if we are suspecting a malignancy. A mammogram is also a soft breast tissue imaging. It can detect, the best thing is it can detect a cancer even before a lump is felt. So it can detect even before that. It gets used either for screening purpose, like if there is a family history of breast disease. So like routinely a woman can do a routine mammogram within every 2 years. Here also this margin, and if simple cyst is present, you can do a fine needle aspiration to do a cytological studies. So in moving to infertility evaluation. So in infertility evaluation, as I said, the case taking is important. We had to take case of both patients along the marital history, sexual history, the previous illness, especially if males are there, the history of moms like that. Everything we had to do a thorough history. So if a male, if the first and foremost test we had to do in a male infertility evaluation is a semen analysis. So we had to advise a semen analysis for after 2 to 3 days of abstinence. So after 2 to 3 days of abstinence, we will get a proper sample. We will evaluate for this sample test. We will evaluate for the volume. If the volume is less than 2 ml, so that is not normal, then we can do a pH evaluation is there. Liquefaction, if liquefaction more than 30 minutes or 60 minutes is not normal, look for viscosity, total count, motility, okay, sperm agglutination is there, the progressive motility, morphology, all these factors should be looked for. So if in patients with azoospermia, some patients may complain with azoospermia, the absence of sperm. Such patients, we had to do an ultrasonographic scanning and also hormone assay like FSH, LHS, etc. Even testosterone or prolactin, depending upon the patient condition. And cervical factor, we can also assess the post cervical test, post coital test we can do to assess the anti-sperm antibody reaction between the with the mucous membrane. And also we can do assess the cervical mucus for bacteriological study. And then for a female, we can do a follicular study to assess the ovulation. The first and foremost, you had to do a semen analysis. After you you take the history that the patient is having a regular cycles, her cycles is regular, then assess ovulation by doing a follicular study. Further, if ovulation are normal, further we can do a tube test to assess the tubal patency, or even the cervical factor, or even you can do examination to look whether the cervical opening is patent, like there is a pinhole cervix is there. Or sometimes you had to ask whether the patient is having a regular sexual contact also. Sometimes the patient may come to you claiming that they are having this infertility issue. By if taking by case, we can see that the patient may have only may have sexual contact for once or twice in a month, but they have no, even they don't have any idea about the fertile period also. So you had to educate them also. You had to educate them also about the fertile period, etc. So here ends the gynecological evaluation. So these are some of the syllabus points that we covered. The diagnostic for PG students, the diagnostic techniques in gynecology, and the basic knowledge of pathological and biochemical investigation. For BMS students, antenatal investigation, investigations in fertility, etc. And non-detailed about laparoscopy, hysteroscopy, hysterosalpingography, etc. Thank you for your patient listening. If any doubt, please ask.
Yeah, thank you, doctors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think some questions in the chat box there.
Okay.
So what's the method of evaluating the PMNL rate? How it is done?
PNML rate. Can you please specify it?
Yeah, it is asked by Dr. Ujida Suresh. Doctor, are you there? Okay. I think we can go to next session.
Okay.
Next question. Wha- So what indication of laparoscopic chromotubation?
Laparoscopic combotubation. Okay.
Right.
I had already discussed about that. If by laparoscopy nowadays, they are using for infertility evaluation. Like if a patient, they both the couples are having they're normal, even though pregnancy is not happening, then a diagnostic laparoscopy is usually advised. For when doing this like diagnostic laparoscopy, they are also using this chromoperturbation to check the patency of the tube, so that all the factors are excluded for for an infertility evaluation.
Yeah, participants can now unmute themselves and ask the questions. Okay. So asking about the AMH and its some details.
Okay, AMH level means AMH is anti-Mullerian hormone. Actually, the woman is having an ovarian reserve at the time of her birth. So at the time of the birth, woman the ovary of a baby is having, especially the girl baby, in her ovary, there will be an ovarian reserve, which is essential for the normal ovulation till her menopause. It is that miniature form is present in her ovary. It is known as ovarian reserve. So AMH is a value, AMH is a marker which we use to estimate the reserve that is present in the ovary. We don't have any other tool to evaluate the ovarian reserve. The only tool is AMH and AFC. AMH is anti-Mullerian hormone. AFC is antral follicular count. By this, we are assuming that if the AMH or AFC value is normal, we are assuming that the ovary is having adequate reserve. But if the value is low, then we assume that the ovarian reserve is less. So this is now gaining more importance because in infertility management, if AMH is less than 1, they will not do any IVF treatment. So most of the patients came to Ayurveda to increase. They itself came to us say that I have low AMH. I need medicine to increase my AMH. Like that, nowadays patients are coming. Now it is gaining more popularity. So the normal AMH value is between 2 to 4 nanogram per ml. It is combined with AFC, antral follicular count is AFC and AMH value are both done together to make a diagnosis of diminishing ovarian reserve. Is it clear, doctor?
Thank you, ma'am. And yes, polymorphic nuclear leukocytes, that is PNML, that means.
Sorry, Dr. Ujit, I don't know about this polynuclear leukocyte. Sorry. I will refer and I will inform. Okay.
So next question regarding differential diagnosis of breast diseases based on mammogram.
So if I had already mentioned that if there is microcalcification or if there is a tumor with irregular margin or if there is more blood supply into the center of the tumor, then there will be a chance of malignancy. Otherwise, a heart mass, which can also be benign, like a fibroadenotic disease, like that, it's more commonly seen. Okay.
Okay, and is it possible to increase the AMH value?
Like that, most of our medicines have action on the ovary. If the ovarian reserve is much low, so we are giving medicine to improve the ovarian function. If there is ovarian reserve in her ovary, definitely our medicine can stimulate the ovarian function. If there is no reserve, so even if we are giving medicine, the ovary will not respond because it doesn't have any reserve, or it may have only low reserve. If the ovary is having reserve, definitely our medicines like Sukumarakritam, Shatapushpa Churnam, Dadimadikritam, Jeevaniya Ganakashayam, all have specific action on the ovary, which increase along with AMH, the quality of the follicle is also increasing. Even if the AM in some patients, I have seen patients with 0.5 nanogram, she conceived naturally. She was advised to do an IVF with donor egg. That patient with 0.5 nanogram conceived naturally because our medicine increases the quality of the ovary. But some patients even with 1.9 nanogram, that is 2 is almost normal. The patient is having 1.9 nanogram. In that patient, she may not conceive, but it depends upon the patients. Okay. But our medicine definitely has role in AMH. If you want to read more about this, Just Google my name along with this AMH study, then you will get an article where I have done part of the project with 60 patients, evaluating our Ayurvedic management on the 60 patients, and the result is published. So you can just Google it and you will get it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I think all questions are answered. Any further question, you can unmute and ask, okay?
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. There is normal delivery. In a normal delivery, the baby comes outside the uterus from the head portion. But in some cases, the baby comes outside from the leg portions or the
Okay.
downward portion. Then in
Breech
that cases,
presentation.
the chances of living are low.
Okay.
And in some cases the doctors do surgery or abortion, advice in some cases abortion. Then is there any possible chance of normal delivery?
No. Actually, if a patient is with head low, that is in cephalic presentation, there is a chance of normal vaginal delivery. If breech presentation, that is if the buttocks portion is in lower portion, so the normal pregnancy is not possible. So you can do a cesarean section. There is no need to do an abortion. You can do a cesarean section and take the baby lively. Okay. So this is a cephalic presentation. The breech presentation is one of an indication for cesarean labor. Okay. Hello, doctor. Am I audible, Dr. Kedar?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello,
Dr.
Dr. Divya.
Swati. Yes.
Very good evening, ma'am. Thank you so much for very lucid presentation. I really loved it. And you cleared all the
Thank you.
concepts. I would like to ask you, ma'am, after the menopause, how frequently do you recommend pap smear test for the normal person? We have to recommend like a general OPD patient. How frequently after the menopause they should go for the pap smear? And
Okay.
also, kindly answer this first.
Okay. First, if you're in a sexually active lady, you can do a pap smear. If a pap smear if is normal, then you can do it after 2 years, or you can repeat. If we are doing 2 consecutive tests, if both the test appears normal, then you can do the test only after 5 years. That much safe is that. Okay. If one test is there is abnormalcy is found in one if we are doing a pap test now this month, if there is abnormalcy is there, if you're taking treatment and you had to do every year, you had to do evaluate. If 2 consecutive year evaluation is done, if it is normal, then there is a more chance of not developing any abnormality. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. And my second question to you is that,
Okay.
as you understand that many of the patients are there who have not taken the cervical vaccination, which are now into the this immunization program, but they were not earlier mentioned in the immunization program. So usually, if the girls, post-married girls or late 30 ladies happen to come and ask for this guidance regarding the vaccination of this, what is your views about it, whether we should ask them to go for it or it's of no use, ma'am? Thank you.
Actually, this vaccine had to be taken before sexually active. Before 16 years or 18 years, they had to take this vaccine. But there are so many strands for HPV infection, almost more than 62 strands. But this vaccine gives protection only to 4 strands. So is there any use? No, na? So it is better not to take vaccine. And you had to, that is one more thing, you had to maintain sexual hygiene, that is single partner, and all these things we had to advise the patient. So nowadays HPV infections are rising. This HPV infections in cervix increases the chance of cervical malignancy in later life. That is after 10 to 15 years, there is more chance of developing cervical malignancy. So in HPV infection, if it is diagnosis in the early stage, our treatment can be managed. We can manage with Mahatiktagam, Ghrutam, Tanganakshara externally application. There are studies done on this topic, which we can manage this HPV infection and prevent the occurrence of cervical malignancy. Okay,
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Swati, for your question.
So we are going to conclude. So one more question. Dr. Ujjala is asking, recurrence of fibroadenoma of breast, what is the treatment?
Okay, actually fibroadenoma of breast, if it is a smaller size, we can, if the patient is complaining use the fibroadenoma, usually the patient feels some lump of the breast, painless or some minimal pain lump on the breast, you can do a USG. And if the fibroadenoma is diagnosed, the modern they are giving vitamin E supplementation like evening primrose oil. We can also give Dhanadadayanadi Kashayam, which has some action on this fibroadenoma of breast. So such type of patient need to be evaluated, like 3 or 4 years they had to do a mammogram test to evaluate this fibroadenoma. Okay. Vitamin E supplementation along with the Dhanadadayanadi Kashayam has action.
Good evening, ma'am. I had a doubt regarding polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Okay.
Based on the symptomatology, what condition can be correlated to in Ayurveda? Like in the patient who presents in a pre-diabetic state with insulin resistance, more than 9 to 10 follicles in the periphery of the ovary, then how do we relate it to any condition in Ayurveda, and how do we prescribe treatment for it?
Okay. We can correlate it into Artha-Akshaya also, because there are irregular cycles, and also Artha-Akshaya is one of the correlation. And with obesity, Prameha Chikitsa, which also we can, Prameha Rogya, Prameha Chikitsa, or Stula Chikitsa, all we can correlate it with. With each clinical presentation, we can correlate this with each condition. Okay. The exact correlation is not. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Or also in Jadaharani, also we can correlate it with PCOS. Jadaharani. Jadaharani means that is due to the abnormal diet and lifestyle. Due to this Jadaharani, diseases in women occur. So we can also correlate this cause of disease like cause of PCOS into Jadaharani also.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
So I think we can wind up. So if any further questions, we can discuss later. Dr. Divya is our faculty in the Swadhyaya session. So we can clarify the doubts whenever possible. Okay. So today we are leaving, and tomorrow we have the session on Panchakarma. Okay. Hope we can see tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you all for
Thank
your
you all.
patient listening. And also thank you, Dr. Jasul, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Ayurveda ma'am.
Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.